Thanks for tuning in for another edition of the Savage Corner. You guys know what time it is. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe and stay up to date for everything Savage Corner. Let's get into it. So Jesse comes to us with a huge background on mental health, mainly dealing with children, childhood traumas, things of that nature. We thought she'd be a great guest on the show for us to go through certain things. Of course, we have a bunch of questions for her, and make sure you stick around for the emails at the end because they are crazy, 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 crazy. So, but without further ado, Jesse, besides being my sister, can you tell people what you do for a living?
I am a licensed professional counselor. I actually work as a behavior interventionist as a private contract for a local school board, and I also have a clinic that I work in locally in
All right.
Louisiana.
Hey Jess, how are you?
I'm good.
What did you do today?
Normal everyday stuff, but I did have some work things I needed to take care of.
Okay. Hey Wes, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Can we just take a breath and just say, what did you do today, darling?
Same as always. Social media, social media, social media, social media.
Oh, okay. So everybody, I went to church with my granddaddy, and then it came home and cleaned. So everybody was productive. Everybody agreed. We were all productive today.
We were productive today.
Good job. Good job, everybody. Okay, so let's get into the questions now that I know everybody's good. Okay, Jess, how does a tough childhood affect how someone feels and behaves when they grow up?
Kind of depends. It's in various ways. It can actually impact them significantly, whether they're struggling to maintain relationships, jobs, financial, stability, that kind of stuff. And they can, just kind of be passive where they're able to maintain functionality, but they're unable to become intimate with or become vulnerable with others.
Okay.
So with trauma, so one thing that I've read, and of course, I'm not educated in the field like you are, but one thing I read is nobody can disclose or tell somebody what a trauma actually is. One trauma could be to one person versus another trauma could be to another person.
You can witness a trauma and have an actual worse effect than you would with a person who actually experienced it. So It kind of depends. It really does depend on how the person more or less receives the information.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is it could be small, what some people could be considered small, and what some people could be considered major. I mean, something like not being chosen for teams your whole life.
Right.
Yeah, of course, over a course of time, that could become trauma. Is that correct?
That's accurate.
Yeah. So it's not always something huge or horrific or what you mean.
It doesn't have to be violent. No, it doesn't have to be violent.
And I think that's what most people trip over. Like, well, that's not trauma. What I had was trauma. You can't impose that, right?
Right. There's something called, I'm going to forget who actually established this, which shame on me, but somewhere in the 80s, if I remember right, there was a group of theorists that came up with the idea called an adverse childhood experience, also referred to as ACEs. It was a 10-question quiz that you took, and it was scored. Anything with a 4 or higher indicated that you had adverse childhood experiences, which equates to childhood trauma. And then, you went from there. That the ACEs results actually impacted things like diabetes, high blood pressure, various forms of other, medical disorders, that they were able to connect from, childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And how they treated that medical also impacted how well they were successful in dealing with the medical issue.
Yeah. So that's the main thing I wanted to tie in with Summer's question was like, what is there a level of trauma? And I guess it's not. It's just different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah, and how they respond to the trauma. That's one of the things they've debated, I guess, and I don't know that I haven't seen any recent research, but one of the things that they've debated was that the ACEs needed to be revised, and they wanted to add in 2 more questions about how they respond, how resilient they were. And I can't remember what the other question was, but it's something along those lines. Resiliency, how you respond to a trauma, significantly impacts how much effect or impact the trauma will actually have on you. The more resilient you are, the less likely the trauma will have a huge response on you.
Yeah. That makes sense, definitely.
That does make sense.
Yeah. So with my question, it seems like, especially with the followers that I have and the people that I deal with on a day to day basis, it circles all heavily around the word narcissist. Now I've come, full fledged to understand what narcissism really is and really isn't. By the way, some people are just assholes; they're not narcissists.
Yeah, I wrote a paper saying the same thing in school, and my professor actually wanted me to read it to the whole class because
But,
my last line was that sometimes they're just an ass. I'm
yeah,
sure the DSM can fit almost anybody, which is our
right,
diagnosis manual.
yeah,
But sometimes they're just an ass, and that's very true. I
yeah,
also think, and this is just my opinion, I haven't seen any evidence to say for sure, but I think, if you look at the Bible, we are innately all narcissists.
yeah,
There's levels of narcissism,
right,
mild, moderate, severe. I think that the more severe kind are the ones that are domestic violence, and the ones that are typically drugs and alcohol, gambling disorders, probably along the lines of, psychopaths and sociopaths and all that kind of stuff. But I think we all have a little bit of narcissism in them just based on original sin. I'm sure there are tons of counselors and other PhDs, whether they're psychologists or psychiatrists, who probably would disagree with me. But I'm pretty sure, just from my experience of 20 plus years in the mental health world, that yeah, I've seen varying forms of narcissism,
yeah,
based upon mild, moderate, and severe.
yeah, yeah. So with that in mind, so for what are some things that a narcissistic parent does, and how does it affect a child as they're
Well, one of
growing?
the papers I wrote, actually, while I was actually working on my second graduate degree, was on respect in the parent-child relationship. What I noticed is that in that study, borderline personality disorder, which is now, they used to think is only females, and then the male version of it was narcissism, that no longer exists. Females now can be narcissist as well as borderline.
Yeah,
There's a comorbidity within personality disorders, so you can actually have more than one personality disorder at a time. You,
yeah,
you don't have to be just one. So you have more modern day uh, people who diagnose who are just saying cluster B, which means that they have multiple personality disorders within that cluster.
right,
Um, it's also less risky to diagnose using cluster B rather than a specific personality disorder. So some diagnosers are just more comfortable with doing it that way.
yeah,
That way, we're not trying to say that this is the only thing going on with the patient.
yeah,
Um, Typically, though, your borderline narcissistic cluster B personality kind of people are very dramatic. They're very intense. So they feel things very strongly, more so than the average person probably would feel. They pick a favorite person typically. They also pick the child that they kind of abuse, whether it's verbally, physically, emotionally. So one child out of four may experience more verbal or physical abuse than any other children in the family.
yeah,
And not every time when that child ages out and moves on will they pick another favorite. More, I would say 50-50. More often than not, they do. They move on to the next child, but not always.
yeah.
Why do kids with narcissistic parents often struggle with their feelings and thoughts as they get older?
That's probably one of the easiest questions I think I've ever. Well, as in the psychology world, it's probably one of the easier questions. It's
Mm-hmm.
because they were told how they felt their entire life, so they have
Mm-hmm.
no idea how they actually feel.
Wow.
So, like, yeah, I'm going to give you a reason to cry, or
My
you're
goodness
overreacting. I don't
gracious.
know why you're acting
Well,
that way.
am I in trouble right now? What's going
Yeah,
on?
I'm just giving you some examples. Yeah.
What,
Yes,
what
yes.
what's crazy is how good she is at that. I don't remember growing up with that in my household.
You
Mm,
didn't.
Okay,
you
I
didn't.
just want to make
You
sure.
did not.
You did
Maybe I
not.
move on to the next child. Like you said. Look, now I'm traumatized.
No, it's just you can kind of pick up on it as someone who, I mean, I exclusively work with women and children, so
Mm,
I very rarely have a male over the age of 18.
Yeah,
If I
mm,
do work with a male over of age 18, it's because I'm helping them get through college typically,
yeah,
mm.
or as
yeah,
a military policeman, something like that. But a lot of the times it's just women and children, and yeah, I picked up on plenty of them, the common things that they say, and they don't realize what they're doing. And I would hope that majority of the parents that I work with that do have those tendencies just don't know any better.
Right.
They're not aware that what they're doing is actually harmful. Um, Depending on the self-esteem or ego of the parents, they can accept feedback sometimes. The more severe personality disordered parent is not going to be able to accept feedback. So sometimes I can redirect them and they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And sometimes they're like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's some quack, you know?
Okay.
They still use the word whack.
Oh, yes, they still do. Trust me.
I still
But
do.
yes, but I mean, they, majority of people with a personality disorder have also had some type of trauma in their childhood or their background. And they're just repeating the pattern of behavior. So I give grace, I give mercy, I understand.
Right.
The best lesson, and God taught us that a long time ago, the best lesson is for us to figure it out for ourselves.
Right.
That's the most impactful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't have to believe me. It's okay. I don't take it personally, and I don't feel the need to validate myself, in that regard. I give them information. They get to decide whether or not they want to accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
even that's a healthy mindset, right? Like, what
Yeah.
did you say? I could care less what they say. I don't need to be validated by them. Like that
I don't
is
need validation. No.
those are healthy words. So
Yeah.
people that are
Yeah.
not in that situation.
I care that they are able to accept it and be healthier parents, of course.
Right.
But I don't care in the sense that I need their validation.
Okay. When old memories or feelings come back and make someone feel upset, that, and I'm talking about children that had narcissistic parents, what can they do to make themselves feel better, or should they seek help? Like, give me something, because we get advice like that, that question in particular, like where do I start? What do I do?
It kind of depends on the level of the trigger. So those are actually triggers. Those are, and I tell all my patients this: you are in no way, shape, or form responsible for how a trigger developed, but you are responsible for identifying it and managing it.
Yeah.
No one else needs to be a victim.
Right.
Because you're not managing your triggers. And I tell patients that all the time. A lot of people are like, well, you triggered me, and try to use it as an excuse. No, that's not how that works.
Right.
You have at some point have to accept responsibility that you can manage that trigger. And you can. First step is to kind of remember what you're actually, identify your feelings. That's probably one of the hardest things for a lot of patients, is actually knowing what they're feeling. That probably takes me the longest part of, I would say, treatment plan, is identifying what you're feeling. Once you can identify what you feel, you can identify kind of why you feel that way. What happened that, are you feeling angry? Why are you angry?
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, you decide how you're going to respond. The number one thing I tell every patient to do before you ever respond to anything is pause. If you can pause, just a little 3-second pause, you are more likely to commit less damaging verbal feedback than you are at any other point.
Right. And I could dive right on that, because I can remember growing up, Grandpa would always tell me, "Why are you reacting?
Yeah.
Why were you even saying that? Are you going to change the outcome? Can you
Nope.
control the person's actions?
Nope.
Then just stop. Take a deep breath. This is Grandpa Hightower. You can hear it all the way through.
This is Granddaddy Hightower. He learned early on he had to keep his mouth shut.
But just don't react.
Yep.
'Cause 9 times out of 10, what they wanted from you was some sort or type of reaction, right?
Yeah, so they can validate why they're acting the way they are.
Right. Take a deep breath. Analyze it real quick. Usually, what I do, I said it in the last episode, Jesse. I don't know if you saw it. Normally, what I do real quickly is I take a deep breath and I get in their shoes.
Oh, that's good. It's a great way to establish mercy.
Saying this because, and then once I start to establish why they're doing it, I'm like, well, damn, I'd react the same way if I felt that way.
That's a great, and whether it's an anxiety response or an anger response or even a sadness response, putting yourself in that person's shoes can help a lot.
Yeah.
I also have a kind of a rule I tell all my kids, that if one party is not in active listening mode, which
Right.
means that you are listening to understand, not listening to respond, then you have no business having the conversation. No
That's
business at
great.
all. If both parties are not in active listening mode, whether it's 5 people or 2 people, of course, this would be a whole lot other conversation if it was just one person arguing with themselves.
Yeah. All
But if
right.
you're not in active listening mode, which means you're not listening to understand, we're not going to accomplish anything.
No,
We're just not.
no. You're just talking to yourself, or you're going in circles, and that's my hardest thing.
You're
And so,
proving a point.
right, right. And so many people get so
Yeah.
stood off when I use that terminology. I mean,
Yeah.
even I've had people. I had a psychiatrist get turned off by me saying that. But it's the truth. I stopped. I say, "Hey, we're going to go round and round and round with this conversation. So let's stop."
Yeah.
And as soon as I did, how dare you? How dare I? What try to resolve the conflict? Like I don't understand.
Well, people are defensive. They can be, completely illogical. That they're
Right,
not rational at all.
right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. um, when how can talking to someone like a therapist or counselor or coach like myself
Yeah.
help someone that's had a tough childhood or going through a divorce, things of that nature? What benefits would a person that had trauma in the past as an adult, going through counseling and things of that nature?
I have patients that I've been seeing for years, and actually it's maintenance at this point, but they
Right,
continue to come because they realize that it's nice to have someone who's neutral, non-judgmental, bounce the ideas off of them, still
right,
be able to confront them if they need to be confronted, but yet there not be any judgment. It's also better to get it out of your head and out of your heart
right,
instead of internalizing it. Because if you keep it internalized, that's where you're going to make your mistake. Lean on not into your own understanding. For brush from the Bible. That's where it comes from. So
right,
we're not verbalizing what we're going through, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. So being able to actually process out loud
right.
makes it more intelligent.
So my sub question would be off of that one, is what would they choose to do? So for an adult, for instance, there's so many different options out here. So at what point in time would they choose coach over psychiatry over coach, so on and so forth?
Psychiatry typically involves medication, and sometimes you need medication to help you deal with the baggage from all the years, and sometimes you don't. Any decent counselor should be able to evaluate, okay, it's time to talk about meds,
Right,
and help you get an appointment or whatever.
right,
Psychologists, typically those are the ones that do more testing and dive deeper, and then your typical counselor, they are, well, the industry is trying to push them to do short term, solution focused, like only 8 weeks or so worth of therapy. But the reality of it is that majority of patients have experienced some type of ACE or childhood trauma, and they're going to be in therapy for longer than just 8 weeks.
right,
Um, I would almost guarantee that when you get to the point of maintenance, you can probably switch to a coach,
right,
and then just check in with your therapist if you still feel like you need that, in your toolbox, of things that you need to know to help you process stuff.
right. And that's usually what I tell most people, because they ask,
Yeah.
why would I choose a coach over a counselor? And I'm like, well, financially, hey, counselors cost way more than coaches do.
Oh
B,
yeah.
B, a lot of times the counselor, although very educated, may not have any kind of history themselves or never been through it. So sometimes it's just easier to talk to somebody that's been through it. So normally, what I tell people, if it's an affordable thing, then start with the coach.
Yeah.
A good one will say, hey, you know what? I'm not qualified for this. Maybe you should go see somebody.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's more mental health issues than,
right. That's
yeah.
something that I would do, because I am not a professional, but I've just been through a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm a great person to talk to. So until then, I can help you, but I may get to a point where I'll say, hey, I'm just not qualified for this. I need you to go see a counselor.
Yeah. In our area, we don't really have a whole lot of, I would say, professional coaches in that regard.
Right.
We may have some that like social media type coaches, or
Right.
like business type coaching,
Correct.
goal, like for education or job wise, but we're
Yeah.
not going to have people out there probably in this area that can do other types of coaching.
Yeah, yeah, because you can get certified for all different types of stuff, right?
Yeah, you can.
But it's not required by any state to actually have any of those.
Not at this time. No, it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. So that's what I try to tell most people. Look, coaches are great. I'm one of them, but it's not the end all, and there may be something else you need need to dive
Well,
into, like counseling or psychiatrist. Yeah,
I think one of the reasons why I'm diverse enough to be able to work with parents and families is because I have one graduate degree as a certified family life educator, which is kind of like a coach.
right.
And then I have another graduate degree as a licensed professional counselor that deals with the mental health stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm able to approach parents and families more constructively.
Gotcha.
There's no judgment. We've all been through something. The main goal is that once you know better, you do better.
Right, right.
No one's a perfect parent, so, and
That,
no family is the cleavers,
yeah, yeah,
so just being able to recognize we all, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different
right.
results.
Yeah, yeah.
When what you're doing isn't working and you realize that, that's when you need to make changes. That's when you need help and you go for it. If anybody holds that against you, you probably don't need to be hanging out with them.
Right.
It's that simple,
Joke.
Yeah, that's
you
just,
see where I'm
that's
getting it
that
from?
simple.
I know exactly where he's getting it from.
So a lot of my upbringing came from women.
Yeah.
And it was the reason why I have the values that I have, and the reason why I do the things that I do, and I work the way I work, because if you think about it, I was raised by several independent women in their own way.
Right.
Very, very staunch independents in their own different way. And it just and from all walks of life too, right? Yes, I mean, Miss Cora,
Absolutely.
African American, you're a fiery redhead. Mom was a people pleaser, but the greatest soul I've ever met in my life. But
Absolutely.
there was so much difference between all of y'all, and that's all that's been poured into me. Now I didn't find it till later on in life. I was a punk when I was a kid, but I mean,
I won't argue that.
Oh, okay.
You weren't that bad. Not compared to some of the things I get to deal with now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just some things you just didn't know. That's all.
I'm sure that's true too.
I just didn't carry the trauma out of it. That's all.
Yeah.
I think I inflicted more trauma than I actually gained.
Sometimes that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite part, we got some emails.
We do have some
Oh,
emails.
yes. I had seen some of these earlier, and I was just like, ooh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's the summer. What you got?
Okay, so when I'm going through these emails, like, Wes is like, what you got for emails? And I've started labeling them to where, like, different TV shows. So today we had one that didn't know the baby mama, and I was like, I think we got a Maury one, honey. Or what? I don't. Oh, okay. Anyways, it was really, really funny. But this one, I try to pick good emails for your sister. So that's what I was scrolling through and looking. It says, the subject was needing help with family challenges. And it starts out, so I had a tough childhood because my parents were always focused on themselves and not really on me. Recently, I got divorced and thought moving back home would help me feel better. But being back here has been harder than I thought. It's like all the bad stuff from my past is coming back, and it's making me feel really upset. I want things to be more peaceful with my parents, but it's tough because there's so much negativity around. I am having a hard time dealing with it all, and it's making me feel really stressed out. Do you have any advice on how I can make things better? Like, how can I keep myself feeling okay and trying to get along with my family? Are there any tricks that I can do to make me feel happier and to make my boundaries really stick? So I can tell you that I left and then came back home and thought that it was going to be different than what it is. But I often believe whatever tore you down, like, God will put you right back where you were so you can be lifted back up. And so that's just the way I kind of look at it. And that's just my opinion and so forth. But like whenever I read that earlier, I was like, holy moly, that's exactly what I did.
Right.
Like exactly what I did.
Well, I mean,
And
that's what most people are going to do. They think, and that's the part about it that I meant by that was that some people, not to say that you did it, but some people will literally run back home because they want somebody to validate or to comfort them in their
Or to rescue them.
and
Yeah.
rescue them from this
yeah.
decision. And as we know, nobody's in control of us. Nobody's going to rescue us. It is all up to
No.
us. So
Mm-hmm.
their outlook or their thought process was wrong from the beginning. So guess what's going to happen when they get there? Wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant by reaching in your past to control your future. I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
actually, Jesse said it to me. It was a relationship. It was when I got out of my divorce. I went and dated that ex girlfriend of mine from high school, and it went super
Mm-hmm.
south. First thing Jesse said, "Well, stop reaching your past to control your future." And I'm like, thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
But it's the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
people search immediately for validation, and I just don't. I don't understand it. Even when I was depressed, going through anxiety, I never sought validation from somebody else. So I don't understand why people get into that mindset because I've never
Because
been
they're confused on what support and validation, what the differences are.
right.
You need support, like your family support. Going home for their support would be great. But if you're looking for validation, that's going to be a mistake,
Right.
you know? Um, and there's the other issues, maybe if you ever, if you are like, if you left home feeling like your parents never listened to you, never understood, you probably aren't going to get any different results now. You know, if they, if you tried to place boundaries before, and even after you left home, you tried to place boundaries and they constantly violated them, if you're living with them, that's going to continue to, to escalate. That's going to continue to be a problem.
I wish I would have known if she moved back in with them or did she live separately from them. That's what I
Right.
wish I would have known.
Well, and you may be able to bear with it for a period of time. Like if you have a goal of, 6 months, and then I'm going to have my own place. And this is how you're going to achieve that goal. And this is how, it's logical. It's a SMART goal, specific, measurable, attainable, within a timely manner, all that kind of stuff. Then you're going to be okay. We can probably do anything for 6 months to a year, but if you're attempting to, kind of like, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Hope Floats. It's got Sandra Bullock in it. She goes
Yeah.
home after a nasty divorce, and she kind of falls apart. And I mean, she's a mess. And
Mm-hmm.
she was expecting her mom to fix it. What she realizes is that mom can't fix this. She's going to have to do it. And then she loses her mom, and she really has no choice but
Right.
to fix herself, more or less. For this, if nothing else, for the sake of her child, because her soon-to-be ex ends up abandoning the child, because he replaces his wife with a new mommy, a new child, and he can't be bothered with the current one. And that happens, especially if you're moving states away. That's going to happen more often than not,
Right.
With new laws kind of in place where you're not allowed to be more than 50 miles away. Being able to move home probably is a whole lot harder for a lot of a lot of women and or men in that situation.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends on the situation. Are they respecting boundaries? Are they blowing through boundaries? Or are they going through their own stuff? Because as you get older, you get dementia, medical issues. I don't know what they're going through. The email's a little vague. If she's willing to be more specific, we might be able to help her more.
Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of these emails that come through, and they're kind of vague, but yet it's enough to have a conversation about. So that's
and are her boundaries actually realistic?
right.
Are we saying, are we saying you're not allowed to ever talk to my kid, or are we saying I would prefer that you don't raise your voice?
Correct.
That's a respectable boundary. That's logical,
Right.
Yeah.
But are we saying you're never allowed to speak to my child by myself? That's kind of dumb. That's unrealistic, And I know that's very simple. It's probably nothing to do with what she's talking about. but I wanted to kind of just set some kind of example.
Yeah.
You know, what
Yeah.
type of boundaries has she used, and are they respecting them?
Right.
You know, if they're not, then she needs to establish them.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm. Like it doesn't even go into, because like for instance,
I
okay,
think whenever, oh, I'm sorry, baby, go
sorry,
ahead.
why are you there in the first place?
Yeah.
Why did you even choose to go home? You
Is it
know,
financial? Is it?
yeah, yeah, and I get it. If it's financial, I get it. But
Yeah.
there's so many scenarios, situations that I've seen, and people go back to home or living with someone else, and I'm like, why didn't you just go and live by yourself?
Well, and sometimes, like the ages that we are now, Wesley, we move back home because not only do financially we can't take care of ourselves
Right,
sometimes, but we also are helping them take care of them.
correct, yeah,
You know,
absolutely,
either medically or financially or both.
right, right. But
You know, like
what I was getting at is,
recently I know of a situation where the father just passed away and she can't afford to live by herself, and she's medically got a whole a list of problems. So the daughter moved back in with her, and I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. You're
absolutely, yeah,
financially helping each other out, and you're also supporting each other with children and medical issues.
right,
Mhm.
right, and
Yeah,
that's what I was saying because a lot of people they go live with somebody else because they don't want to be alone, and I don't think people realize how healthy it is sometimes
to
to
be
be
alone. It's
yeah.
very healthy to be alone.
And if you think about it, most people they get out of high school, they go to college, right? Let's take a normal life here. They get out of high school, they go to college with a roommate, right? Then they get out
Yeah,
of college and they go get married. They're living with somebody again, and then they have children. They're living with somebody again. So there's a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people that go through their entire life and they've never been alone. They don't know how to do it. They've never done it before, and it's one of the most healthiest things that you could ever do.
there's a style of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, and kind of the um, main point is to learn balance,
Right,
work and play, all that kind of stuff, learning balance in life. Um, and that's kind of the way balance with validation is kind of very important. Um, in your wilder days, Wesley, I'm sure you have gone to a club and
no, never been.
equally gorgeous people, whether male or females, you'll have one that's getting hit on left and right, and guys won't leave her alone, and they're just downright vulgar and nasty, and you want to smack the crap out of them for them.
Right,
And then the other girl, they won't even touch her. And it's because she doesn't need to be validated,
right,
and she's not putting that out there into the world.
yeah,
And the other girl is just screaming, validate me, validate me, validate me.
right.
And I see it all the time. My own daughter's a prime example. She's gorgeous, she's stunning, blonde hair, hazel eyes, absolutely beautiful, dancer, professional dancer, ballerina. Let me specify, not pole dancer, please. Yeah, you get all sorts of ones with that one.
Yeah.
But she can go into a club and nobody will tit on her. No one will mess with her
Yeah,
because she's not screaming, validate me.
right.
She's validated. She doesn't need your validation.
Yeah,
People leave her alone because
yeah.
they instantly know, don't mess with her.
Oh yeah.
You know.
The energy.
And then her friends, equally gorgeous, all of them stunning, and they're left and right messing with her.
Yeah.
And one of them got mad one time, like, why are these scumbags hitting on me? And my daughter's like, well, my mom says. So she had to learn not to put that out there.
Right.
Don't put out there that you need validation. That's an imbalance.
Right.
Like there's nothing wrong with needing to be validated to a certain point.
Right.
Like sometimes, like we say, ugh, I feel crazy.
Right.
And it's because we want somebody to say back, you're not crazy. You're just going through a lot. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But when you put that other out there where you're in constant need, am I doing this so I can get validation? That's a problem.
I mean,
that's a problem.
We see it in comments, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'll put something out there, and the first thing that gets fired back is, it goes both ways. You are literally seeking for validation with that comment. I'm sorry.
Yep. Exactly.
To be naive to think that I didn't know that, first of all. Second of all, it's not what the post said. It didn't.
Yeah.
the other party's not capable. It
No,
just says that this party's capable. Okay,
absolutely.
so to me, am I wrong? Isn't that even that's an invalidation thing too, right?
Oh,
You're
absolutely. It can
somebody to
be.
agree with you. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it
you
just
want somebody just to agree with you.
yeah, yeah, and it just it blows my mind. I mean, half the stuff that I put there was one where I put out Jesse, and it literally said if you are a male going onto social media to bash your ex partner, you are the worst form of male that there is possible. And do you know the first comment says, "Oh man, if they fuck around, they find out." You just did it. You literally just did it.
Wow.
You just pegged yourself as one there, buddy.
Yeah.
It's like,
You-
oh, look at me. I'm one of those.
because so and that's the thing.
Hard, but I mean, it definitely lacks integrity, and men
Mhm.
are really they're held to a higher standard in regards to integrity.
Okay.
Women, I mean, and Summer can speak to this too. When we display integrity or independence, we're automatically labeled as bitches,
Right.
you
Yeah, I didn't
know.
think
But
about that. Yeah,
when
you're right.
men lack integrity, they're dogs. You know, they're the scum of the earth. You
Right.
know, they're narcissists. They're
Right.
whatever the new hip word is, you know, to
Right.
label them as. But I've had parents ask me like, what do I need to work on with my kid? And I'm like, integrity, because it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You know, integrity is something that's really important. When people are accusing you of something, and you have groups of people saying, no, she would never do that or he would never do that, that means at some point you displayed integrity,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and that means something,
Right.
you know. But a lot of people, like, he just blew his own integrity.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, he literally just said, I'm one of those people,
Right.
you know. I don't think it's respectful for either party to do that, because at
Right.
some point you apparently loved each other enough to be in a relationship,
Right.
and that love and respect should still be there,
Right.
even if the relationship ended.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, it maybe it just wasn't meant to be. Maybe it just didn't work out. Maybe whatever. But that hate should not be there.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, if you've processed through that relationship and you're done, the hate's no longer there.
Right.
You've
No,
moved on.
it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You've moved on.
And
I
that
agree with that.
not to even mention when they get out of counseling and they go into the law the legal side of this. You know, you go from counseling to divorce lawyer. They're going to tell you right away, what are you doing? Take that off
Oh,
the internet. You know,
yeah,
like
and you can get charged, like here in Louisiana. I don't know if every state does it now, but here in Louisiana, you can actually be charged with the crimes for doing that.
oh yeah, no, yeah, it's
Yeah, and I don't, like I said, I don't know how every state does it, but I know here that's a big thing.
no, it's a defamation of character.
Yeah,
So I mean, and I know in Virginia at least,
phone harassment, I think is what they also call it.
yeah, 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 and
Media harassment. That's what it is.
it's so deep, at least here in Virginia, where so if there was a female, let's just scenario, a female cheats on her husband and then moves out and marries the man that she cheated on her husband with, you can actually, so that's adultery, right? But you can actually turn right around and sue the gentleman that she cheated with for defamation of character, as well too. So they can,
Alienation of affection.
yeah, and they can actually be charged for that.
Yeah,
So there's these huge legal ramifications behind you opening your mouth on social media.
yeah, and commonwealths are not no contest. I mean, you could choose to have a no contest divorce,
Right,
but commonwealths aren't normally. You have to have some kind of reason to divorce.
right,
So when I put the information out there, I'm like, well, that was your own dumb fault.
right.
And then on top of that, the new spouse is aggravated with the ex because she won't move past it. And I'm like, you literally, hello, hang on.
Right.
We have, yeah, you're allowed to be angry. I don't need to validate that. You gave her a reason to be angry with you.
Right.
You literally you just handed on the silver platter. And
Right.
then you have the nerve to tell her she needs to get over it faster.
Right. Yeah.
That's not how that works, honey.
No, zero.
You know, you did something to her. You violated her boundaries and his boundaries that should have been in place. And you get to dictate the amount of time it takes her to get over it? No.
No.
No. Now,
Yeah.
can she conduct herself in an appropriate manner? Absolutely.
Right.
But you don't get to decide how quickly she gets over it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just not how that works. But I
Yep.
see it time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same way for the males. I see it time and time again.
Right.
You know, it's like that's not really how that works.
Was there a second part to that email, babe, or was it just what you read?
No, it was just what I read, baby. And there's another email too.
Oh, was there? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Juicy
there's one
one.
more. It's it's kind of juicy. It's a little
Okay.
bit juicy.
All right.
The subject was seeking advice regarding children's well-being in a custody arrangement. It says, I'm feeling concerned about our children's well-being, especially during their time in the custody arrangements. As you know, our children are going through a lot, and I can't help but worry about how they're coping, especially given the challenges they may face whenever they're with their father. I've noticed some worrying signs that remind me of my own experiences with him during our marriage. I want to make sure that our children feel safe and loved and supported no matter where they are. But lately, I've been feeling unsure about how to navigate the situation and ensure their needs are being met. I'd really appreciate your advice on how to handle this delicate situation. Have you been through something similar, or if so, how did you approach it? What steps can I take to ensure our children are okay during the time with their father? Whoa.
Several different things, though. I mean, does she mean like their basic needs aren't being met? Food.
Right.
And I'm just reading it, and I'm gonna say like all of the basic needs are being met.
Okay.
This is more stuff of like they used to fight and he would yell and she didn't like it, and I think is where this is going.
Really, the only thing she could possibly do in that scenario is request family counseling,
Right.
the co-parenting counseling through the courts.
Yeah.
Because if she attempts to intervene and withhold the children, she's going to be the one in contempt of court. She's going to be the one in trouble. Even if she has a valid reason to do so because she thinks that they're not safe, she's still going to be the one in the wrong.
Right. And
Her best bet is to do it through the legal,
yeah.
legal system, where I don't know what state she's in.
And that's the hardest thing too. Like as a parent, and I'm in a co-parent situation, but as a parent, you have to take yourself out of it first of all.
Yep. Especially emotionally.
Right. And you
remove emotion.
You have to step back and say, what's the best position for my child? Not for you, not for the way you see things or the way you think it's supposed to be, for your child. And that's for two reasons. A, legal reason, right? But the other thing too is the mental aspect of your child. If you take that parent away from them, or you are the reason why they can't get to that parent, you are going to be held at fault by that child, right, Jesse?
Yeah, and if you're speaking negatively about the parent in front of the child, you're alienating that child from the parent, even though you physically may not be keeping them from them. So you're preventing that child from actually developing their own opinion. And that matters. You have to step back and you have to shut up.
Right.
And, those things are important. Daddy used to say, your butt is cashing checks your butt can't afford. Same scenario in this situation. If you don't pay attention to what you're saying and how you say it,
right,
you may be spending 25, 50 grand on a child custody battle because you couldn't shut up, you know? And it's really important to remember, you've got to remove yourself emotionally, do everything as much as you can, through the legal system. If your child needs counseling, take them to counselor. Let the counselor tell the dad,
right,
hey, I'm going to need you to quit yelling at the kid, because this is why she's responding this way.
Yeah.
Don't let that information come from you. Let that information come from a professional.
Correct. Yeah.
In most states, I can't say all of them, but most states, all the child has to do is be like around 12 years of age, and they're able to seek their own mental health counseling because of that.
Yeah.
So if your child is saying, hey, take me to a counselor, or there's enough evidence that you need to take your child to a counselor, suicidal thoughts, self-harm, not eating, not eating well, not being able to maintain relationship with peers, not going to school, I mean, I can probably give you a whole list of different warning signs that, hey, your kid needs to see a counselor. If you have enough of that, then take your child to the counselor. Let the professional give that feedback to the ex, and that's leaves you out of it. That's better off.
Right. Yeah, and I think it starts with, how does the kid feel? Have you
Absolutely.
asked the child? Did you remove yourself out of it and ask the
Is the
child?
child complaining?
Yeah.
If the
Are
child's
you?
not complaining, then you might want to leave it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I just see a lot of parents that are, because it's not done their way. That's it.
Or
And
they're
then,
being emotionally triggered and they're afraid
hmm
that
I'm not
that
gonna lie. Whenever I read this, that was my first thing. I was like, oh, so you're not getting what you want.
right.
That's what's my first. And I know that's
yeah.
an awful way to think because I usually try to read these open minded. And I was like, okay,
It kind of sounded like she was being emotionally triggered though. Like if
yeah,
she's seeing things that she experienced herself while she was married to this individual,
Right.
yeah,
whoever this person may be, and that's what scares her. That's what's like. I don't want my kid to feel this way, the way I did when I left the relationship.
Right.
mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with her not wanting that,
Yeah. Super bad.
but she may be feeling that, but he may not
She
be,
wanted to do.
Right.
or her daughter may not be, whichever the case may be.
Yeah.
So the only way she's really going to be able to know for sure is if the child sees a counselor.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
And I
Yeah.
wouldn't go to just anybody with an LPC behind their name. I would go to a specialist, a child child specific counselor who
Mm-hmm.
understands children of divorce,
Yep.
that kind of stuff. I wouldn't just go to, oh well, she claims to be a counselor, but she's 2 minutes outside of college and she's 22 years old and she's never had children of her own. She's not even
Yeah,
maintained a relationship, and
Right.
you're expecting her to be good. Nah, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
no,
You need to go to somebody with experience who actually understands children of divorce.
Right. You have to,
yes,
it even goes with time. Like, how long have they been in visitation?
yeah,
Did
yeah,
this just
Mm-hmm.
start? Did you just get divorced? Has it been a
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
year, 2 years? You
Has
know,
this been going on a while?
right.
Is there a new stepmom in the picture? What else?
Yeah,
What other adjustments is the child having to make?
Right.
yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing that I would have to say that I take out of that email, though, is that people have to realize, like I said, you have to remove your selfish wants and needs and think for the betterment of your child, mentally,
Absolutely.
physically, financially. All your moves need to be for the betterment of that child. If you can't
mm-hmm.
provide the proper atmosphere and home for them, then they need to spend more time with the other person. So on
Yeah,
and so forth. Do not. I see it too many times where people, it almost like they're using their kids and don't even realize they're using their kids.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
just it's sad, and I think a lot. I hope, me seeing the good of people. I hope people don't even realize they're doing it. But it
mm-hmm.
just I see it too many times. Where understand that there's going to be a time when that child is legally allowed to make their own decision, and when they go to make it, don't be mad. Don't
Yeah.
Yeah,
be mad. Because you probably put way too much input into the situation and didn't give that child enough space to actually find out on their own if
mm-hmm.
that's what they wanted to continue to do.
Yeah,
And counts with me. So my 3 to, I would say, 7-year olds, I typically see them with the parent because a lot of times it can be a parenting error.
Right.
Yeah. Like they're not following timeout correctly. There's not appropriate consequences. There's all sorts of different minor things that typically they may need help with. Um, After about that, I normally have one session with the parent, and then it's just me and the kid.
Right.
But I always leave the door. Like if the parents want to come in with or without the child to tell me something to update me, they're more than allowed to. But whether or not it's with or without the child is up to me because I know how the child is going to respond. Like I know that child is not going to be open if the parent is present.
yeah,
And that's not necessarily because the parent is a bad parent or controlling or doesn't listen. It's just sometimes, children are just wired that way. They do sometimes better without the parent in the room. They're going to be less on guard. They're going to be more open, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Typical children, that's just every child responds that way typically. But some children are more open to having the parent in the room and they're okay with it.
Right.
It's few and far between.
Yeah.
But it does happen, and I decide, okay, yeah, we can do that with a parent. That's not a big deal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But be open to that, and ask the therapist when you're like, I think you should shop for a therapist.
Right.
So when you're
Yeah.
shopping, find out how much experience they have. Ask them, what are your views on me talking to you with or without the child if I ever need to talk to you about something.
Right.
Yeah.
Let them tell you. You know, um, there's plenty of they should be giving you a copy of something called the Declarations of Practice and Procedures, and that should spell it out in there. But if they're not, you might want to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the one thing I wanted to ask you, because I got two people that asked me the other day, and I was like, I really don't even know how to answer that question except for what I do. Right. So when a child goes to counseling, the parent berates them for the information afterwards. Aren't you just shooting yourself in the foot? Right. It's not even gonna work.
No, because they're going to stop going.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because you're violating their boundary. That's a boundary for them. That's their private time. You
Right.
know, and if you're pushing them into telling you everything they said during counseling, that's probably your own insecurity.
Right.
Number one, you already feel like you're not a good parent.
Mhm.
And number two, you're keeping the child from being able to feel like they have a safe space to be human,
Yeah.
to cry. You know,
You didn't even give a thumbs up. Why'd you get a
I
thumbs
didn't
up?
even, I don't know.
yeah,
I liked what she was saying.
yeah.
Right.
You're preventing the child from actually, like I tell people all the time, like they get upset. I don't hand anybody a tissue. I don't hug, nothing, because when you do that, you're you you stop the process.
Mm-hmm.
Crying is simply pain leaving the body. It's allowing you to process whatever it is you're dealing with. And when you stop them from doing that, you're interrupting that process.
Yeah.
So if I have a child in my chair crying, I'm going to let them cry for as long as they need to. If I have one come in and cuss, make a sailor look, innocent, I'm going to let them do that because they obviously needed to do that.
Yeah.
Um, it just depends on the situation. But if the parent being present, or the parent actually, what did you say? Why did you say that?
What is a healthy process after they see a counselor? What does a healthy process look like? What I mean by for a parent, like once the child comes out of counseling, gets in your car, what's the
Oh,
healthiest way of establishing that right there? Because it is. I'll admit sometimes when my kid gets in the car, I'm like, don't Wes, and I don't, but it's just like I want to ask, hey, how'd it go? And then you want to talk about like I don't know the procedure there.
don't say that part. I would
Yeah.
definitely say, especially after the second session when it's more just the kid and the counselor,
Right.
and not you're not present anymore. I would ask them, hey, how'd it go? And if they said fine, I typically, and I tell this to my patients, so if any of them watch this, they'll be like, oh, that's definitely Miss Jessie. Fine means feelings intentionally not expressed.
Ooh. Can we wait a minute. Wait. Can you repeat that again?
Fine means feelings intentionally not expressed.
That needs
When
to
a
be
person tells me that, I'm like, no, there's something, you're leaving something out. What are you hiding?
right.
And not necessarily something bad. It could just, they don't, at that moment, they can't or don't want to process. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I give them permission to do that. But I do tell them, I'm fully aware you're not processing.
Oh yeah.
Because they need to know I'm not going to ignore that. I'm going to give you some time and I'm going to give you some grace, the space you need, but I'm not going to let you not process. It's not happening.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed.
Yeah.
Whenever I say I'm fine, you leave me alone because that means I'm processing something. If you leave me be until I'm ready to talk about it, don't you be pulling this mess on me, Wes.
Doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of people will say that, and you don't have to take it surfacely. You could say, oh, well, are you getting along with the counselor? That's the most important. Do they have rapport? Are they getting along?
Mm.
If they're getting along, there's rapport there, then it's fine. Leave them be. Leave them alone. They're not going to continue to go.
I'm not going to lie, when Corbin was going to counseling, I would totally ask, Well, what did you talk about? Do you want to talk about it, Mom? Like, I'm trying to be this amazing, supportive parent, and the whole time I'm ruining him.
Right. Well, like I said,
We all do that.
normally I'm like, hey, shut up, Wes. Just shut up. And I don't ask. I have it, and I never will. And look, I've gotten to the point where I don't even take them anymore. Because I want that to be his space. And I've gone.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I went the other week. I didn't go in with them, but I took them and sat in the lobby.
Yeah.
But up until that point, like I removed myself altogether, and his grandfather takes him, which I think is great. It gives him time with his grandfather. They go out to eat afterwards.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
It's just like, I remember when we first started, like, I got to be there every visit. I got to go inside with them. And I'm like, he's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you know that they're safe and they're actually productive per se,
Right.
Then leave it be. There are times where I will purposely do something just to see how the child will respond. So, for instance, the child will come in and they have had a great week. There are no referrals at school, have brought up their grades. And I'm like, you know what? You've earned a fun session today. So we're just going to play board games or card games today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What they don't know is while we're playing the board games and card games is I'm still teaching social skills.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're going to still play this, we're going to take turns. I'm going to pretend like I'm a kid and say, I want that color,
Right.
and have them navigate like, well, okay, we'll take turns. You get to be this color this time and I'll be that color next time. That kind of stuff. The kid doesn't know that's what I'm doing, but I'm still working on social skills because those are very, very important. They're life skills that make all the difference in the world. But for the most part, they've earned this free session per se. Also, there are some kids who just will not open up and they're always armed. They're always got their guard up. So I have arts and crafts, beaded projects, bracelet projects. The kid not even aware, he or she, that while they're doing it, they're less armed and they're more likely to talk, and they'll tell me stuff that they would have never told me sitting behind my desk or sitting there with a piece of paper, writing out notes,
Right.
So some parents are like, what are y'all doing? Oh, I've had kids say this. Well, we did this. And they're like, that's all you did? Mm-hmm. Yep, that's all we did. You don't have a clue what we actually accomplished in that hour, but okay.
Yeah. And that's really what it is. It's they shouldn't. I think when you're doing it properly, it shouldn't feel like they're going there to unload on you. They're going because they like being with you and they like they like how they feel when they're afterwards.
There. You're not gonna take a kid who spent, let's say, 10 years of his life with a narcissistic, borderline, abusive, child molester, whatever else, drug addict, alcoholic, whatever's going on, and then put him in another family, him expect to fit in and follow these rules, and then come to my office and I'm going to extinguish stealing, lying, motivated, not doing his schoolwork. I can't extinguish all that at once. We're going to have to start one thing at a time. But I'm not going to be the therapist who's going to be like, why do you act like that? You should know better than that. Which there are therapists who do that. Mm-hmm. But I am the therapist who's going to say, I really wonder how the courts are going to look at that if you continue that behavior. Mm-hmm. I want them to think about it. I want them to process, I probably need to stop, but I'm not the one saying, well, you're a piece of crap, just like your mama says you are, So I don't want to go there. I don't want to be that person, even if I wasn't the therapist, I wouldn't want to, if I was a teacher, I don't want to be that person, I want to be the person that's gently redirecting them to govern their own behavior. That's the most important part. That's how integrity is built.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, definitely. We're probably getting close to the end here. Do you have any more of that email there? Or
I do not have any more emails for you. No, I have a buck in my lap though.
But if either one of them wants to be more specific, I could probably help a little more.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with the emails that I've seen so far is that they're vague. And I know I don't want people to sit here and write me a 30-page dissertation. You know what I mean?
No.
Sometimes if you're looking for your real answer, you may want to embellish a lot more information, because if not,
be a little bit more specific.
Right.
Give me a little just enough to help me. I jokingly say this. I know just enough to get myself in trouble. Yeah, I just need a little bit more, and then I can be more specific.
Famous
Yeah,
words.
famous words.
Well, typically we get on a small soapbox at the end, Jesse. So, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, childhood trauma is something that's it's perceived by everybody different ways. It doesn't have to limit you. It doesn't have to define you. You can overcome it. How or what that journey looks like is individualized. Some people, like for instance, I use a lot of the same. Like one of the things I use is conquering negative thinking. It's a workbook for children. It's for teenagers. You can buy it on Amazon. But it's 9 different negative thinking styles, habits. One kid will want to go through the entire workbook and do every single one of them, and he'll want to write in it, and he's diligent. The next kid, well, no, I only experienced this one and this one. I only want to do those 2. Hey, perfect. We'll do those 2.
Right.
One kid will be like, no, I don't really like to write, so I do it orally.
Yeah.
You have to find what works for you, whether it's self-help books, counseling, a combination of both, religious counseling, self-help books. There's plenty of religious self-help books out there. You just have to figure out what works for you. It's not a destination. You're not stuck. You can get through it. You can overcome it. You can become a healthier individual.
Right. Right.
And the other thing I would say, and this is recently something came up, people have sometimes excused their behavior because of their trauma. I'm going to be the first to tell you that many people have been through probably a similar trauma, but they're not reacting the same way that you are. You don't have to do that.
Right.
You can do better.
Right.
You just have to want to.
I'm going to say that they were kids raising kids. They were only educated to what their mothers and fathers taught them.
Absolutely.
So give them grace and understanding
and mercy.
Make better choices with your kids so your children don't have to go through what you went through.
Right.
Yeah, we don't need intergenerational trauma.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I look at it. Because I had lots of childhood trauma, and I don't look at it the same way. Even with my brother and sister, we don't look at it all the same way. And one event wasn't as big to one kid, but it was huge to the other one, and it wasn't even that one's fault. Like that one wasn't even in trouble.
Right.
So I think
I've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, I think that people need to look at it in a different perspective, and you need to step outside your I'm the victim mentality and look out and say that person had no idea what they were doing was wrong.
And not intentionally.
In their lives. No, not intentionally.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. Go ahead, baby. Let me get yours.
So I would piggyback off of both of y'all. I mean, remember that you're in the driver's seat. It's up to you. Nobody's going to do it for you. And is it going to be easy? I don't know.
Yeah.
It may be easy for you, but for most people, it's not. But you have to make the choice to want to be better and to do better for yourself before you can do better for anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. You have to make a conscious decision that I want to do better for me, and then I can do better for other people. Because if you don't do it for yourself, then you're not going to do it properly, or you're not going to do it at all.
Yeah.
And
it won't be for long.
Right.
Yeah.
And let things go. Like I did a quote this week, and I freaking love it, Jesse. It was life is like monkey bars. To move forward, you have to let go of the one you're on.
Yep.
And there's just so much power behind that small simple quote.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's you have to let things go, move forward, do things for yourself. If you want better for you, you can do it. I mean, you can. There's people that've been in worse situations. There's people that've been in lesser situations, but you can definitely do it. So, all right.
And you're not alone doing it either.
Nope.
No,
that's out of your emotional brain.
That's what the channel is all about. Is you're never alone.
You're never alone.
But that's gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the Savage Corner. Yeah.
Peace, love, and light.
Bye.